I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations as the traditional custodians of the lands and waters upon which I am privileged enough to live and to work. I extend and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge their deep understanding of accountability through their powerful connection to country. Sovereignty of these lands has never been ceded. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. This is for the Developing an Indigenised Curriculum unit with a focus on Assessment Task 1. This presentation will be focused on indigenizing business curricula. In particular, the unit that I'm involved in is the Accounting and Finance for Business Leaders program. This makes up part of the Masters of Indigenous Business Leadership here at Monash University. It's a 2-year part-time master's degree that we offer within residential intensive blocks of learning. This has been designed and created to try to increase access to business and to higher education for Indigenous business leaders working and operating within Australia. So it has an application to both for-profit, not-for-profit, and also community-based organizations. The unit Accounting and Finance for Business Leaders that I'm involved in provides an introduction to accounting and finance terminology, concepts, and techniques for leading organizations here in Australia and further abroad. Taking a user's perspective, this unit focuses on the integration of financial statements, both financial and non-financial analysis, working capital management, cost and performance measurement, and budgeting techniques. The unit is therefore set both in a local and a global context to ensure an understanding of decision-making and value creation across diverse business environments. The particular focus we have on this unit is trying to develop an understanding of the role that accounting and finance can play, both in leading Indigenous organizations as well as non-Indigenous organizations. And so what we find is the students that are coming to us as part of the program are operating in both areas, both within mainstream non-Indigenous organizations in corporate Australia, as well as within Indigenous-led community-based organizations. And so we think it's really important to be trying to tailor this material and have the ability to open up these conversations for operating in both worlds. Applying financial and management accounting principles in the interpretation of financial statements, as well as exploring the process of value management in a local and global business context. Therefore, measuring and interpreting financial and non-financial information for leading organization in value creation, both the financial value creation as well as the non-financial value creation, such as social and cultural capabilities, as well as environmental value and information. We undertake this unit and the program based on a rights-based approach to education, in which Articles 3 and 4 of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples establish Indigenous peoples' rights to self-determination. Importantly, this includes the right of Indigenous peoples to establish and control their educational systems and institutions under Article 14. Therefore, the program speaks to Professor Mark Rose's call for institutions and policymakers to elevate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice in education by engaging more fully with Indigenous communities. We go further here to elevate Indigenous voice, where Indigenous voices take centre stage, elevated within the classroom from Indigenous-led teaching, business leader student participation, elders and residents that engage in the program and students learning within the residential units, Indigenous business guests from industry, together with Indigenous-based pedagogies and ways of learning. We discuss key accounting and accountability concepts throughout the unit and place these within the context of First Nations business application. In doing so, we try to interweave Indigenous and non-Indigenous content and knowledges across the unit to empower Indigenous students and assist in deeper contextual understanding. This includes providing an opportunity for students to creatively unpack our relationships to money in small groups, accessing image cards to discuss our money story and pictorial images to create a collage of money stories, in particularly bringing out the context and the relational aspects of their money journeys and sharing those amongst them together and also with the teaching team. We actively discuss Western capitalist economies and Indigenous collective economies through Carol Hilton's work at Indigenomics Institute in Canada, as well as with My Money Dream materials based here in Australia. We facilitate a place-based relational connection with accountability, where we ask students to walk out onto campus, taking photographs around aspects of accountability to them, getting familiar with place, using place as a form to ground themselves in the notion of accountability, and taking that back into classroom discussions where we actively discuss those photographic images and we share those together. We partner with Indigenous business organisations such as Indigenous Business Australia, Kinaway Chamber of Commerce, and Deloitte to host an industry-based event where Indigenous guest speakers are brought onto campus and are able to yarn with students over dinner, sharing their own experiences, and offer students the ability to seek clarification and guidance from experienced Indigenous leaders working out in industry. We make use of New Zealand First Nations financial statements to build a case study of how an understanding of financial information for decision-making can assist in attaining financial independence and determining self-determination for iwi groups back in New Zealand. This is significant and important where students take this knowledge back into their communities, increase their own understandings when working in their businesses, and assist in operating on organizational boards in Australia with this newfound financial information. Assessments encourage and try to apply a reflexive approach to learning, where students are actively encouraged to apply their key learnings to their own context and community settings in a way that best suits them. Creating a reflection activity as the second piece of the assessment here, we ask students to apply the knowledge in their own unique ways, asking questions about how the information, the financial information and also the non-financial information and techniques have been able to be applied and utilized in their own organizations. Based on the financial statements and annual reports of their organization that they choose, what would they do differently to increase value within that organization? And that can be social, cultural, environmental, and other forms of value. And asking students how they would think about taking this knowledge, this accounting and finance knowledge, into their futures over the next 12 months. So it's about applying the knowledge both today in their real context and also how they might think about enhancing their knowledge and application in the future. Applying key accounting methodologies, frameworks, and techniques to their own organizational contexts, for-profit businesses, and community-led organizations, students are able to build a richer understanding of how accounting can assist in organizational decision-making, determining when accounting methodologies, frameworks, and techniques need to be adjusted for new models of value creation, more suitable for diverse organizations. As we've learned from Nakata's concepts of the cultural interface, new knowledge emerges from the interface between Indigenous and Western knowledge frameworks. Students begin to conceptualize how accounting can be used as a positive tool to increase economic outcomes for themselves and their communities. Students take this knowledge back into communities and actively share how this can assist in increasing their own sources of funding, becoming independent and not always reliant on traditional means of funding from the past. Some Indigenous readings and literature are provided here that we utilize within the unit, but again, we rely heavily on the content that's coming in from the students' perspectives, where they share their own money stories, their own experiences with accounting in their organizations and within their own lives too. We also supplement that material from our elders and our Indigenous business guests, that we try to encourage application within the learning for students from industry. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing feedback.